day that they recalled what had happened or something interesting. So Michael's CPAP machine has a timestamp thing on it, so it set a timestamp when it shut off, which was at 3:15 in the morning. Kevin had asked Michael what time it is when they woke up, and Michael said 3:15. Then Michael got back in the tent from using the toilet, and then for some reason, one of the two asked the other what time it is, and the other one answered 4:15. And then they went back to sleep. They didn't think anything of it at the time. They didn't think about it. And that's the interesting part. That's how we scientifically and with solid timestamp and electronic evidence found out that we had missing time, or at least some of us did, about an hour of missing time. And that's where this investigation really started. So there was somehow an hour between 3:15 and 4:15 in the morning that seemed to be missing, that nobody remembers. Or at least Kevin and Michael don't remember why that would have been. They weren't awake for an hour, or didn't think they were.
That is strange.
It is. And so then it was after that we had spent most of the next day actually talking about what had happened, running through circumstances just to try to eliminate logical bits of evidence or logical things that could have happened naturally. But most of the things that we'd talked about seemed to point to something truly strange happening. And for a while, we'd thought that it was mostly Sasquatch involved, because we thought that maybe it was the Sasquatch that could have turned off Dan's car battery for a short time and even shut off the CPAP machine. By the way, the CPAP machine was hooked up to one large battery. And Kevin told Michael the next day that that battery was only 50% drained. So that battery wasn't dead. There was nothing wrong with the battery.
Now, I got to ask you.
Or there shouldn't have been.
Ask you a question. You know, I don't think Bigfoot could do it, but do you think maybe there was some alien contact around that area? You know, I mean, that's an area that's very well known for UFOs and stuff like that.
Indeed it is, and that's why we went there for this documentary filming, and that's a good question, which I will get into.
We got to go a little bit faster, though. So,
Okay. So, I think it was the next day that we actually found out that a number of other campers in the area also happened to experience battery failures overnight, which we didn't talk to them because we had to leave. Some of us, anyway, had to leave pretty quickly the next day, but other campers experienced battery failures. And during our investigation the next day of what could have happened, we'd taken out compasses. There were 4 of us, 3 with normal, old-fashioned magnetic compasses, and 1 guy with an electronic compass from his motorcycle, which didn't seem to work well anyway. But the 3 of us with magnetic compasses stood at 3 different parts of the campsite, around the campsite perimeter, and Michael told us to point where our compasses were saying north is, and the 3 of us had pointed in different directions. It was shortly after that we figured out that Dan's car actually had some sort of magnetic charge to it. So we were walking around the car for a while. We got this on camera too, like hours of this. we're walking around the car with compasses, trying to figure out where there could be a magnetic charge coming from the car that could be interfering with the compasses. And of course, we considered there were mechanics on the team, so we considered the possibility that there could have been magnetic interference from the magnets in the car, from the motors and the other computerized things in the car.
I'm going to interject. I know a lot about cars and electronics. Believe me about electronics.
Mm-hmm.
Anything in the car like that, if it did, you'd have to be within a foot of the car or closer to get any type of reading. Seriously, the car, is going to be shielded with all the metal. Now, what I got a gut feeling, because of the loss of time, you might have all suffered a loss of time. Well, the people sleeping wouldn't realize it, but maybe you guys had a visit from something that was checking you out. I'm not talking Bigfoot. Again, I was stressing that area is very famous for UFO sightings, and actually, isn't there a lake near there too?
Yeah, we were camping right next to Lake Taklock.
Yeah, and
which is near Mt.Adams.
I don't know the depth of it, but like a lot of UFOs been sighted going into water and going into lakes and stuff like that. You could have been visited by some strangers from out there, and that's why you guys suffered the loss of time, the magnetics, different readings, just a lot of things. For a battery to fail. Now, you were talking about how cold it was. If your battery is like probably 4 or 5 years old, it's a good chance when it gets really cold, the battery could, stop, producing any current. But then as the temperature starts warming up past a certain level, then, the battery will start flowing current again and work. But with your compasses, what you're saying was happening, the loss of time with Michael W. Hall, which I trust 100%, and some of this other stuff you were talking about, I got a strange feeling you guys had an encounter and you didn't realize it.
I do believe so. And so I'll just jump to basically the end of that magnetized car investigation. Through different methods, we did determine that Dan's car had been magnetized, unnaturally so. It wasn't the ground. We tested the ground where the car was. It wasn't the ground. There was no charge, no anomalous charge in the ground. So it was his car that we had determined had a binary or a polar magnetization to it, positive at one end and negative at the other, like a bar magnet. And since then, we've talked to him since then, and we've heard that he has even gone to I think it was a Nissan or whatever other dealership the car came from. No other cars there were doing the same thing. And even since then, he's continued to have magnetic charge or something to his car, and it might even be getting worse or causing problems. I don't know what the current situation is, but it's interesting because it's been continuing, which means that it's not just one anomalous incident. It's something that actually did something with a powerful electrical charge that it was exposed to. Now, there was some talk about stories in our group about UFO sightings and incidents involving automobiles, and I don't know if the car was actually moved or if it just got charged by a craft, but we don't think it was moved anyway. But there have been many accounts, many incidents with flying saucers and other crafts of vehicles not only being lifted up or being set down by these tractor beams from the crafts, but sometimes even taken aboard, sometimes taken off planet or somewhere. And weird stuff has always happened to these cars too. Of course, you can imagine that would be a normal thing for a car to be, or at least if it did go on an ET ship, there would probably be something different about it when it comes back.
Well, I gotta say something. Now I gotta say something. What about it with cars and stuff like this? Now, back in the early or mid '70s, me and my ex-wife at the time, or wife at the time, we were driving back from North Carolina, and we got into New Mexico, going through the desert. Okay, it was probably 11, 12, 1 o'clock at night. I can't even remember. That's years ago. But they didn't have a speed limit, or if they did, it was like 105 was the top end. Seriously, it was really crazy. So I was, with my car, I had GTO. I was going as fast as I could go, enjoying the road at night. And all of a sudden, the whole area around my car and inside my car got like brighter than daylight. And I thought to myself, okay, well, it must be a police helicopter or something. I must, they're going to pull me over or do something. So I pulled off the side of the road. And I got out of the car. And I stood up there, and it was bright as daylight, if not brighter. It was where it was hurting my eyes. And it seemed like forever, but probably with maybe 5-10 seconds, it was poof, it was gone. And I got back in my car, and unfortunately, my wife was still there. But I didn't think anything of it for years, other than I thought it was, I will say, after being in the military, I know what helicopters sound like. There was absolutely no sound in that desert. When I pulled off and shut my engine off, there was nothing, not a bit of sound. Now, I have to say, maybe 1,000 feet back on the road, there was another car stopped. But I didn't bother talking to anybody. I just took off and left. Well, years later, I went into, because I was having some health issues. I had an MRI, I had x-rays done, and then I was going back to the doctor, and the doctor's head nurse came up to me, and she goes, where did you get that piece of metal in your spine? And I go, what piece of metal? Well, did you have surgery done? And I go, no, I had my tailbone broken, and they put it together, but this is like almost the middle of the back. Okay, nothing was ever done there. There was no scars, no nothing. And, I figured maybe she was mixing me up with another patient. And then, I get in to see the surgeon, and he goes, well, you got this piece of metal in your spine, and it's, this big. And I'm going, well, I never had any surgery there. And he goes, well, I don't see any marks of anything, anything, puncture marks, scars or nothing. It's nothing there. And I said, okay, well, is it going to do any damage? And he goes, well, older you get, you're going to get arthritis around it. You might have disc problems. I said, okay, can we remove it? And he goes, no, there's scar tissue. If we do that, you maybe never walk again. Well, it upset me for a day or two, Troy. But back here, maybe 8 years ago, one of my sons got in trouble where I had to go for a year to court with him in Pierce County, when he, through the courthouse. I would go in the courthouse line, they had the metal detectors and all that stuff. It would go off. So, here I don't have my wallet. I don't have my, anything on me. They, I'm a big guy, they say, take off your belt. I take my belt off. They run their wands and stuff, and it would go off in the middle of my back. That went on for a year. And I don't know how it happened. Then, when I was talking to Michael W. Hall here back, maybe 4 or 5 months ago, we were talking because Timothy Collin, he was abducted. Roger Lear was a surgeon that removed the implant out of him. But we were talking about all this stuff, and then it dawned on me that night in that desert, when I pulled off because that bright light, maybe we were abducted and we don't know about it because, at that time I my car didn't have a clock radio in it. I never liked wearing a watch. I didn't have a watch. So, and I never thought anything of it too after I was talking to Michael W. Hall, that how could that thing be in my back, in my spine? And that's why I'm saying, like with you guys, you're there at that campground. And some of the things were, his